Welcome to another episode of Consent Dojo. This has now been going on for over a year now, and I'm really enjoying this experimentation. This season is sponsored and organized by Firehorse Productions. That's my company. And next season will be another company that will be hosting this. So what's Consent Dojo? We gather once a month, usually on the first Tuesday, and I bring on amazing special guests with a unique perspective on the matter of consent. Now, I initially started this with a focus on rope bondage, but I want to expand this out to thinking about consent in all sorts of directions. And if you've not checked out the previous episodes, please do so. And I have it over on, if you go to Planet Midori and go to the education site, there's actually a link for all of the consent dojos. I'll put the link below for the recording. Okay. So in Consent Dojo, think of me more like a Terry Gross, an interviewer. I figured pretty early on that I cannot teach consent. I don't know if anyone actually can teach consent in the way that, say, we might learn how to make a roast chicken. Okay. It's highly nuanced. In some sense, it may seem simple, but it's actually really nuanced. And because of the nuance and the perspective, and consent culture is developing and growing, I want to create this as a space where we can develop our consent muscles, think about things that we haven't thought about before. And I am here to learn from my amazing friends. So, through our 90 minutes here, my guests will bring in new ideas and even assignments and homework. They're generally fun. Don't worry about it on that. So, and we have a live attendance, and they'll be asking questions as well. Now, let me invite this lovely, amazing human being onto this virtual Zoom webinar stage. Let me introduce Jennifer Rahner, and Ra as in rah, 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 R-A, and pronoun she, they, me, pronoun she, her. So, Jen.
Yes. Hi.
Why did I drag you on here?
Why did you drag me on here?
Because you're awesome and you have a really interesting perspective. Now you are the operations manager, I believe.
Director of Operations at the Sexual Health Alliance. Yes.
Yeah, Sexual Health Alliance. And Sexual Health Alliance is where Kink Informed Certification. It's a certification program for helping professionals to become more savvy around working with their clients who may be practicing in alternative sexuality, like BDSM. I'm one of the co-directors of curriculum. And in the process of working with Jen, I realized that she's got some great wisdom and perspective, hard-earned from personal journey. And I wanted to bring you on to talk about that. But before we get into this topic, tell us about a bit about what you do and your field of expertise.
Okay. Well, I'm a sexuality and relationship educator. That's my other job outside of Sexual Health Alliance, and that's how I came to work there, because I started a few years ago going through their course myself to get my certification as a sexuality educator, but I've been working as one for about the last 6 years. So the 6 years I've been working as one isn't, necessarily the wealth of experience. It's the 40 some years before that when I've stumbled along and been trying to figure out things on my own, which led me into this career. I am a trained and certified Bodysks Facilitator. Bodysks is the iconic workshop founded by Betty Dodson that she taught in her New York City apartment starting in the 70s. Her first book, Sex for One, was one that really influenced me as a young adult. And when I had the opportunity to go train with her, 4 years ago, I jumped at it. So it was a 4-year journey. I actually just got my final official certification as a body sex facilitator, and I'm super excited about that. And I've also trained with a lot of other really great teachers. I think once I had the opportunity to go train with Betty, I started to seek out other people that I admired and to see if there was any opportunity to train with them as well. So along the way, I've trained with Barbara Carrellas of Urban Tantra, and I'm an Urban Tantra certified professional. I also teach another. Oh,
What population are you working with?
well, I primarily work with women and female identified persons.
Mm-hmm.
Body sex is a workshop about learning to love your body, and appreciate your orgasm and accept pleasure into your life. Revealed is a workshop about digging into your sexual story and kind of revisiting it to see if the narrative that you tell yourself is actually the truth or how you see it now with, with all of your wisdom in hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
So I've taken kind of this circuitous path, but at this point, I kind of deal with the whole person. I help them with their sexuality, but I also help them with how they feel about themselves and their embodied self.
Now let's jump right into
Okay.
the topic that you brought up, and I'm like, aha, I want you to talk about this. So far in Consent Dojo, we've been talking about little acts of recognizing when we've let the opportunity for consent making slip. We've talked about how to make apologies that's genuine. We even talked about whether one can actually consent to art. We've talked about policy and politics and how to make sure that individual consent is actually part of within the legal structure, which it actually isn't fully, shockingly. We've talked about a lot of things. And for those of you who are interested, check out the back episodes. But you brought it back to something that I'm ashamed to say I hadn't thought of as a topic, which is consent with one's self. Now, I'm going to warn you, and I think you know this is coming. I may be playing devil's advocate, you all. So for those of you who are watching and I'm asking questions like I should know better, I'm playing devil's advocate and also asking as people who may have just stumbled onto the idea of consent for the first time. So I am playing a role, if you will. So I'll be asking some questions. All right, so let's start with what in the hell is self-consent? And what are we talking about here?
Right. Well, self-consent is about treating your needs, your desires, and your limits with respect. And to do that, you really need to understand your needs, your desires, and your limits. It's not something that we tend to spend time on unless we're in the moment with a partner. So when I talk about self-consent, I mean really taking the time for yourself to understand those things about yourself so that when you are in a situation with a partner, you're very secure about your needs, your desires, your wants, your limits. And it also kind of goes, self-consent also goes into giving yourself permission to experience pleasure, permission to take time for yourself, permission to hold your boundaries.
All right, so permission to hold boundaries and having boundaries. Okay. Well, this is where I'm going to start with the
Go for it.
devil's advocate. Well, if you don't like something, can't you, one just says no. So what's the big deal? It hurts me even to say that.
I know.
So, yeah. And yet that is something people think. It's like, well, what's the big deal? Just say no. If you didn't like it, if it wasn't comfortable, why didn't you speak up? Or why are you telling me now?
Many of the people that I work with are female identified, and they tell me that they've been raised or influenced by society to be giving, to be to be available,
Agreeable.
agreeable.
Mhm.
Saying no is something that can be very difficult. Not just for female identified. That's more my experience. It's my lived experience, and it's
It's
the
also your client base too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
we we tend like we are raised to say yes when we mean maybe, or yes when we mean I don't know. And we don't often take the time to really dig into what it is that we want, um, and what we will allow. Um, One thing that's a really big flashing neon sign that you're not good with self-consent and that you haven't kind of done the work. If you find yourself the morning after having a lot of regrets, why did I do that? Why did I let it go that far? I didn't really want to do that. Those are the kinds of flags that can kind of be like, you really haven't gotten good with yourself on what it is, what your embodied yes is.
There is a fuzzy spot though. If if I haven't experienced something, right? Let's say I haven't experienced spanking,
Right.
and that I have a date and I try spanking, and then the next day I'm like,
Absolutely.
how would I know that before? Or is that one of these I learn and figure it out along the way?
Uh, we all do. We're ever changing. I mean, we start from a position of having very little experience, and hopefully throughout life gain more experience and more wisdom so that we can make better choices as we go on. Um, I I actually have an exercise that I love, which just kind of digs into helping you to discover what your wants, needs, desires, and limits are.
Okay, let's get to that in a bit. I still want to dig into that before we get into the exercise to wrap our heads around this.
Okay.
Okay, so to distinguish between I've experimented with something new and I don't think I like it,
Mhm.
versus I said yes to something when it wasn't really fully a yes, and the next day it feels icky. How do I distinguish between the experimental outcome is a negative versus the experience is unsavory and I should have made another decision?
Mm. Well, for me, it's about it is really kind of about understanding how I feel it in my body. I mean, I come back to embodiment all the time because that's how I've kind of learned to take my temperature on things. Um, when I say yes, where do I feel it? How does it feel? Or when I'm thinking yes, where do I feel it? How does it feel?
Okay, so the embodied practice, can you elaborate on this? Because, and for viewers' sake, since both of us are education professionals and run in a circle of folks that, I mean, honestly, it's so easy for us to take for granted because we've gone through the struggles but a while back.
Right.
We're in a position where we're constantly thinking about and talking about this, whereas many of the viewers may not have, which is why Consent Dojo exists.
Yeah.
So could you elaborate on, just pretend I don't know anything about this, which I actually don't know much about, the school of embodied practice. So
I don't know that I know much about the school of embodied practice. This is something that I've learned kind of through my own self-exploration, and really, I didn't have words for this till very recently. Um, it's actually been through my own journey that guides along the way had started to ask me, you're having this feeling, you're having this emotion. Where do you feel it? And it was something that was really new to me. I was like, what do you mean, where do I feel it? I was kind of like, what kind of question is that? Until I really took a moment, took a breath, and tuned into myself, right? So anytime you're experiencing a feeling, an emotion, if you tune in, you can feel it in your body. For me, I get a lot of a lot of my yeses are right here. I can actually feel a sensation in my chest when I'm a yes.
what's the sensation?
An openness, sometimes a tingle, sometimes a little flutteriness. I mean, think about when you meet somebody and you experience that instant attraction, right? That instant like, oh wow, this is a person that I want to get to know, and how that feels in your body. I mean, for me, that's always like, it's like an opening of my chest. It's like a deep breath. It's butterflies in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
It's that excitement. That is a really good example of an embodied yes, right? You feel that excitement, you feel the fluttering in your stomach. Um, think about something that you don't like, right? If you think about something that you don't like, you can almost feel this contraction and this, um, for me, a lot of times that's even lower in my stomach. It's like the pit, the dread in the pit of your stomach. And, as I'm saying these things, I'm like, wow, these are all of these, parts of the English language that we talk about all the time. We talk about the pit of dread. We talk about butterflies in the stomach. Well,
Mm-hmm.
they really are sensations that you can feel if you tune into your body.
Now the tuning into the body. Now you gave an example of, and again, I'm thinking in terms of many of my coaching clients, because I also do as well. Um, many may be neurodivergent. Many may also come from a different linguistic background.
Mhm.
So butterfly in the stomach may not translate to some. Also, you were talking about that immediate attraction to somebody, which may not be a universal feeling. So those of you who are viewing out there and you kind of like, that's not what I experience. And Jenn is speaking for Jenn's self as giving examples within her body. But you may not be feeling these same things under same situations. And it doesn't always, in order to get familiar with what the body does when you're having an emotion, if it helps you to think that way, when you're having an emotion, or if you're having a brain event, if you prefer, there may be body events that happen with it. So a good thing to and you don't always have to pick out of sex relate or relationship, as we're practicing and figuring out how your body reacts to emotional states, or what I call symptoms. So imagine going to a scary movie. Oh, I went to see Nope recently.
Oh, is it good?
It's really good.
Okay,
Um,
good.
I felt my shoulders rising because I'm not much of a horror person, and it's not really horror, it's more suspense, right? Um, and whereas if I go to a movie that's like, oh, I don't know, a Marvel movie, um, I'm more wiggly, right? And So for the viewers who might not be necessarily relating to like sexual or relational situations, those are loaded, like seriously loaded. So it might be a nice place to start practicing with the other things that make brain and emotional events. Now, for those of you who are accustomed to sitting with your feelings, you are already halfway there. Now, I see a hand up. So, Jen, would you mind if we take a question?
Not at all.
Yeah.
So in the Q&A, the question is, what if you're torn between how you feel? For example, part of me wants to engage, wanting to get that instant gratification, but another part of me wants to maintain my boundaries and I don't engage until I feel completely safe with the person. In that split second, in the moment, what should we do? Can you be too rigid in your boundaries?
That's actually why I recommend digging into this self-consent practice of working on discovering your wants, your needs, your desires, and with respect is kind of the key to that, right? I have absolutely experienced the I want this, but then realizing that in a particular situation, and let's just say, we can use spanking. I like being spanked. Somebody wants to spank me. I'm like, oh, yes, please. Like, absolutely, I want to do it. But if I'm in a situation that's unfamiliar, if I'm, say, at a club and don't really know anybody there, if I'm alone and don't have like a buddy there with me to watch my back, those are situations where I would think twice about it, because I haven't taken enough time to understand the environment, get to know the people, really understand what I'm getting myself into. So even though I might really want a spanking, at that point, I would comfortably hold my boundary of I am not going to play in a space that is unfamiliar to me. And that is something that I developed for myself 10 or so years ago, because I had situations where I was like gung-ho and all in and had some bad experiences. So now I'm much more cautious, even when I really, really want something.
Let's see if I can tackle this one. I think the phrasing was completely safe. I would, what is in that moment, what's good enough safe? Because is there ever anything that's completely safe? There is nothing in this world that is completely safe. Life is a terminal condition. I have steps in the house, them be dangerous, totally not safe, right? But also, yeah, there are, what's the context of safe and what's safe good enough? One, also, how badass am I feeling in the moment to be able to handle it when the situation changes? So I might have the same situation, say going to a play party, I'm on my own, okay? Jen's not there with me. I'm at a new play party. I don't know anyone. And it's across town and I don't have a car. I'm relying on Uber. Okay. And as I'm walking in, and this is actually, I'll talk about my thing around self-consent, because as you're talking about it, I realize it's something that I do and I teach. I just have a different word around it. As I walk in, I am assessing the situation, but assessing me. Okay, strangers, party, other side of town. I don't have a ride and my buddy's not here. What does good enough safe for me mean to me tonight? And this changes, if I'm feeling tired, hungry, if I'm feeling a little fuzzy headed, or if I've been sad or PMSing, or I know that I'm feeling kind of vulnerable to being swayed, my boundary may be bigger. Whereas I'm like, Okay, bring it. I am like the female Anthony Bourdain, and I am ready for an adventure. If I'm feeling that in me, it's going to be a different criteria, my split-second decision. So consent with self is a conversation with oneself. So it may also be, how are you feeling with your ability of making best decision in the moment, and my ability in dealing when situation changes?
Absolutely.
So to the person who asked that question, I'm wondering if that perspective is helpful, which means part of the thing that I teach around negotiation actually is, and I have a negotiation video over in my Patreon for those who are interested. Before, let's say Jen and I are, may have a play date, but before we start to negotiate, I have to, this is what I say, check my squirrels and check my gut. And check my squirrels mean, how present am I, or am I distracted by a ton of different things? Do I have a bunch of deadlines? Am I dealing with annoying things with work and life and family? Am I flustered with 1,000 things in my head? Or am I just like kind of not fully present because squirrels in my head, or not? So check my squirrels, take an inventory, and check my gut. This means, what am I hungry for, and how am I feeling around ability to make decisions in a changing dynamic situation, what I was saying earlier. Once I've checked my squirrels and checked my gut, then I can start having a negotiation with, say, Jen.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree that it's, and I was thinking that as you were talking that, we talk about intuition or our gut reaction, right? And I've operated a lot on that in my life. And I feel like, like you said, nothing's completely safe and nothing's 100%, but if you really do pay attention to your gut, again, embodied, something you're feeling inside of you, you'll often know what the right choice is to make.
Here's another thing for the viewers is, think about when you're feeling badass and confident and you had a bunch of like wins, personal or professional wins. How do you walk?
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, when you've been in quarrels, or some random person on the street was rude to you, or you got chewed out at work, or whatever, those series of not wins, one of those days, how do you walk? And how do you hold space? That might be a good thing to start thinking of as well. So when you first suggested, I'm going to be honest with you, when you first suggested, as if I'm never not honest with you, that is such a dumb phrasing,
I know.
Yeah. All right. So when you first suggested consent with self, I found myself thinking about, is this applying to self-pleasure and masturbation?
Well, it is. That's
Okay.
another facet of it.
Okay. Talk to me.
I kind of think about that as permission, giving ourselves permission to fully experience things. And I hear this a lot from my clients too. Oh, I couldn't do that. Oh, shame. Like there's so much around shame. Like I want this thing, but I feel all this shame about even wanting this thing. Right. So getting to a point where we are able to give ourselves permission to have this vast array of experiences and have the experiences that we crave and that we want. Many of my clients raised as female, we're told to be good girls, we're told to wait for marriage, right? We're told all of these things about sexuality, from people who are trying to protect us. And then the culture is telling us all these things about like sex is great, sexuality sells, right? So we're getting all these mixed messages, and it's hard to dig into what you really want and allow yourself to experience that pleasure. When I was a young adult, I had an experience that I recognize is not an experience many people have, particularly when I was growing up. Um, Late teens, still living at home. My father tuned into the fact that I was a little bit of a wild child and maybe doing some things that maybe I didn't really want necessarily to be doing. And one morning I'm having coffee, and this was after I'd been out late, and I'm sitting in the kitchen having my coffee, kind of still half asleep. My dad walks in and he sets down a vibrator on the counter in front of me. And it's one of the old school cream colored jobs that you could pick up at Spencer's in the mall.
Put it on the neck. Yeah.
Right. That took 2 double D batteries. So it's standing on end, and I'm looking at it going, why did my father just put this in front of me with my coffee in my hand? But he proceeded to have a conversation with me about getting to know myself before, or at least in tandem with, allowing other people to know me sexually. And, of course, at the time, the last thing that I wanted to be doing that morning was sitting there talking to my father about masturbation. And it was mostly just him talking to me and me just sitting there sipping my coffee going, oh my God, can this be over soon? Because I'm really, really uncomfortable. But in hindsight, I recognize that was one of the most beautiful gifts that my father could have given me.
Mm-hmm.
So many times our parents or people who care about us are trying to protect us, and in trying to protect us are going, oh God, no, sex, don't do it, stay away from it, you don't want to get pregnant, you don't want to get a disease, just say no. Whereas my dad took the position of, you have a right to pleasure and you can do it for yourself. And you need to figure it out for yourself before you're allowing people to come into that space.
Wow. Okay. When you first said this, I'm like, what? Your dad? And I'm like, okay, I got it. This is a grown-up to grown-up sex ed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's great. Or grown-up to a newly grown-up younger person. Yeah.
And
wow. Okay.
And I use that story because, like I said, I don't think very many of us have that kind of experience. And with clients, I ask them to give themselves that permission, to understand themselves, understand what gives them pleasure, understand what kind of things they like. Like I said, either before or in tandem with being with a partner. So one of the things that I teach people is I call it my self-pleasure power hour. Sometimes it's not an hour. Sometimes it's whatever little bit of time I can carve out in my day. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, but have it on my calendar as my self-pleasure power hour every day. And I take that time to do something that I find pleasure in. Sometimes that's masturbating. Sometimes it's taking a bath. Sometimes it's sitting down and turning off all my electronics and reading a fiction book. Whatever it is, it's giving myself permission to take that time for myself and experience something that I find pleasurable. And if you make it a practice where you're doing it on a regular basis, right? I do try and do it at the same time every day so it becomes habit. It translates out into other areas of your life. You get to understand your pleasure in a deeper way. And then you're able to better communicate to the people around you how they can help you experience pleasure.
I love that you're organized and self-disciplined around pleasure. So I got a question about self-pleasure, or on the more sexual arena and
Okay.
masturbation. Have you ever said no to yourself?
I have.
Okay, because
Actually, sometimes I've started and I've went, no, this is not really what I want right now. So then I shift direction.
So yeah, saying no to oneself, because that may seem like counterintuitive, right? How do you say no to yourself?
A habit I've had for a very long time is I tend to masturbate when I'm sick.
Oh,
So when I have a little bit of a fever,
uh-huh.
I tend to really want to masturbate. I have I think now where I've settled is that it's a bit of self-soothing behavior, right? It's something that I know, one, that doesn't take a whole lot of effort if I'm using a vibrator, right? I don't have to think too much about it. And it like I get this little moment of pleasure in this situation that otherwise is making me very uncomfortable. But there are times when I've been sick, and this is, like I said, this has been a habit for a long time. I mean, a very long time that I go to masturbation when I'm sick. There are times when I will like make an effort, be like, okay, oh no, that is not the best idea right now. Whatever the situation is.
There, you set a boundary to yourself. Now, I want to notice that there's acknowledge that there's a hand up. So let's find out what the question is.
There are a couple more questions in the Q&A have come in. First one is, what do you do if your gut doesn't help you make a good choice? How do you learn to train your gut to be more trustworthy / accurate for what works for you?
Sit, gut, sit. Good gut.
And the second question is, do you have some good exercises for figuring yourself out?
Okay, let's tackle one question at a time. Okay, so back to, what was that, when your gut is not a good dog? Okay.
And that is where that self-discovery comes in, right? So you start to understand your needs, your wants, your desires, and then you weigh out situations and things in terms of like what fits in with your personal code of ethics, right? What kind of person do you want to be? You take all of this information, and getting all of this information is kind of what helps train your gut.
Yeah. I gotta say though, I mean, it's okay. So I'm 56 years old, right? And it's easy for the 56-year-old Midori to say, yeah, my personal ethics, values, boundaries, and Jenn, you've seen me just speak the hell up when nobody else is talking. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing getting to the point of I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. But I wasn't that. I mean, there's no way that the mid 20s, or I don't know, even early 30s Midori could have realized what if I was trying something because I was genuinely curious, if I was trying something because that's what I'm supposed to try, or if I'm trying something or doing something because I thought that would win approval of either individual or a group, or I'm trying something because the alternative is undesirable. So might as well just do this instead of that other thing that could happen. I mean, my younger me was dumb, and I think to answering that question, for me speaking, looking at 56 years of life, is if my gut is an indecisive, untrained guide, bad puppy, lost puppy, not bad puppy, just uncertain puppy. The moments that I was able to grow was exporting my gut, AKA having wiser friends who, and they were often my same age, but they had my best interest in mind. So they weren't necessarily my lover. They were my friends that I could turn to, and I had to trust them in when they said. So I had a lot of, when my gut was as uncertain and young and inexperienced as the rest of me, yeah, I'm thinking about my friends.
I think about the Buddhist practice of a sangha, which translates into wise friends. Surrounding yourself with people who can help you figure that out, right? So self-consent doesn't necessarily have to be just a conversation that you have with yourself. It can be talking to people and testing things out. I would say, though, find the right people. And that's even a little hard to do when you're young, because you can also find a lot of judgment and stuff there.
Yeah. And I must say I got lucky because I left my nest and ended up in San Francisco. Yeah, and so I was able to find people with similar values that wanted me to respect myself and value myself more than I was aware of. So, yeah, to ask ourselves is not always, can be very hard. So having good friends. There was a second question to our lovely producer.
Yes, and another has come in since, but that question was, do you have some good exercises for figuring yourself out?
And I think you do on this one. So
I have an exercise that I recommend. I actually learned this from one of my teachers, Juliana Hauser. I forget exactly what she calls it, but I call it the 4-quadrant exercise. And I just so happen to have it written up here. So what you want to do is you want to come up with a list. And it can be really in any, it can be food. It can be sexual things. It can be activities. You can do this for just about anything in your life. Now, I'm a sex educator, so I deal with sex. So I would say come up with a list of sexual things from mild to wild, things that are old hat and easy for you that you would do with just about anybody, like holding hands.
okay, we're going that basic.
Go that basic. And then go all the way to things that you're like, oh my God, I can't imagine I would ever in a million years want to do that. Come up with a list.
Mm-hmm.
And then take those things and categorize them in the 4 quadrants, right? So up here, so things that you've done and you would be happy to do again.
Okay.
Things that you've never done, but you want to do. Things that you've never done and absolutely don't want to do. Things that you've done, but you don't want to do again.
Okay.
And in doing this, it's kind of like, it's practicing, right? It's gaining muscle memory. It's practicing deciding dependent on what it is, where it falls for you.
Okay.
Where the thing, like outside of, and just assume that all of these things are with someone you don't know.
Okay, with somebody I don't know. Can I try that with food first to give folks all right, can you hold it up so we can follow? Okay, so done it, and I'll do it again. Sushi. Okay, what's the next one?
Never done but want to do.
Never done but want to do in food is a traditional Pacific luau,
Ooh.
like buried in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Done but don't ever want to do again.
Giant roasted water bugs in whole water bug. I ate it. Done
Yeah,
it.
I think that's a hard limit for me.
Yep. Don't need to do it again. I did it. I actually like roast crickets, but turns out I don't like water bugs.
How about never done and don't want to do?
Bird's nest soup. Yeah. Oh, and then there's the done it and I don't want to do is actually eating shark, shark and whale. Because growing up in Japan, I was eating whale, right? And I've eaten shark. And while I actually like the taste of them, I don't want to do it again for other values.
Yep.
Even if I like the taste of it.
Yeah.
So there's the food thing. Okay. So let me see if, shall we try this with sex thing?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. Your answer or my answers?
Oh, you got, do you want my food answers first or do you want to,
Yeah, go with the food answers, because this is, I think, a good exercise, because I hadn't thought about the shark and whale is done up but don't want to, and not necessarily because I don't like the taste. With the water bug, I didn't like the taste.
Right.
Yeah. But the shark and whale was a value issue.
So done it and we'll do it again. Coffee ice cream. I absolutely love coffee ice cream. I have for a very long time. Never done and want to do. I have tried so many things that I wanted to try. I'm trying to come up with one. I have Cristal champagne. It's very expensive and I've never tasted it, and I just want to see if it tastes very expensive. Done it and don't want to do chicken's feet. Ate that at a dim sum place, and I just, the taste was just fine to me, but I cannot get over the texture and the little tiny bones and the texture thing. Never done and don't want to do. I have seen people eat like live larvae, and I really don't want anything that's still moving in my mouth.
It's very Klingon.
Yeah, I just
Klingon me.
the thought of it, I can't get past that.
All right, so moving into the sexual arena.
Okay.
Many of the viewers out there may be familiar with the long negotiation checkmark list, right? I am not a fan of that thing for actual negotiation, but I think that list of, like, it looks like an insurance form. It's like long, right? All the things. And that all the things in the list might be a good go through those and place it in the quadrant. It's not the best negotiation tool for some people like it, a lot of people don't. But how about this? I'm gonna throw things at you and you fit it in.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm gonna specify for you giving or receiving. All right. So you being tied up.
Oh, done it and would do it again.
Okay. You tying somebody else up.
Yeah, done it and would do it again.
Okay. Let's see. You being vaginally fisted.
Done it and would do it again.
Now that was an embodied reaction, if I may say.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. What about catheter? Urethral catheter.
No, never done, don't want to.
Okay. Well, that was
Actually, no. Let me think about that. I've done it, but not as play.
medically.
Yeah, yes, like for medical reasons, and I can't imagine finding that pleasurable. So no, don't want to experiment.
Okay. All right. Bottoming to a clown.
Never done, not opposed. I wouldn't go so far as want to do, but
can you tell me where your embodied reaction and sensations are and what it is?
Oh, sure. I think you noticed, like with the clown thing, like my nose wrinkled, like I was smelling something bad, like I'm just not sure. Yeah, so that reaction was more like I don't have a strong reaction against, so it's not like that pit of my stomach thing. It's just kind of a weird, like, oh yeah, I the nose crinkling, that the confusion.
Okay, so your gut is telling you what?
My gut is telling me so my gut is not going either way. Basically, like I don't feel threatened by it, but I don't really feel turned on by it either.
Okay. All right. What about erotic choking of somebody else?
Me doing the choking?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do it.
Okay. All right. And folks, remember, we're assuming for stranger because, okay, now what about being choked by somebody? Say a stranger.
Stranger.
Or stranger or somebody you met at a party, not like,
Yeah.
like you just met at I don't know, a conference.
So
Like
just met somebody.
Yeah, you're at Dark Odyssey, so.
Done it, don't want to do with a stranger.
Okay, and what's your bodily sensations and where?
Tightness in my chest, mouth going slightly dry, fear.
Okay.
And discomfort.
All right. Now we've been assuming for somebody that pickup play, somebody that maybe a casual acquaintance at an event. Mm-hmm. How does this vary by levels of intimacy for you? Activity versus activity overlapping with relationship.
Well, I mean, choking is a perfect example because that is something, if I'm very comfortable with somebody and I trust them, I really enjoy. But it is not something I'm at all comfortable with someone new until I know that I can trust them. And it's funny because I kind of gave a little thought when I had the embodied reaction to vaginal fisting. What went through my head was thinking about somebody I knew, but actually that is with the proper protection, that is certainly something I would feel comfortable doing with someone that I don't know well.
Okay. All right. So like that big negotiation list is going to be contextual, right?
Yeah. The other thing that one of one of the ways that you can use this exercise is you can do it just for yourself. I mean, it's a great way to just kind of sense your reactions to different things, but it's also great to do with a partner, right? Either sit down and do it together and use it as a talking point, or each kind of retreat to your own spaces, do it, and then compare and talk about it.
Now we've got related to that. There was a question that I just noticed that says, why is the quadrant exercise done with the assumption of a stranger? And I think that was just to illustrate at one type of encounter. So sometimes just to get us started, right? Just to get us started. So we moved on from that which you would do with a, let's just say play acquaintance, because stranger sounds weird, because at least hopefully you would have said hello. So a play acquaintance. So we started the quadrant exercise just to have a place to start with. So assuming for Joe or Jane Doe, that's at a kink event. And this may be different if you do this with your primary or secondary or friends with benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And could this be turned into a fun game with the other? With somebody you're at some levels of play relationship?
I'm sure it could. I'm trying to, what's racing through my mind is, how could we turn this into a fun game? Almost like a truth or dare kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are ways to turn it into a game. What I love about this exercise is it's just, it's exercising that muscle.
It's the self-assessment, right?
Because a lot of, self-assessment.
So for the viewers, I want to emphasize that the quadrant is an exercise to be done for oneself, assuming for different situations, because what's in the quadrant will change based on, am I at a party with an acquaintance, or am I at home with my sweetie, my main squeeze? And doing this, the conversation is with oneself, so we're training that gut.
Training the gut, training the muscle, understand. And so often when we're confronted with these kind of these questions, like, do you want to do this? Or I'd like to do that. Or God forbid, somebody just goes in for it, right? If we're talking about consent, you should have talked about it before, but somebody goes in to do something to you and you're like, I'm not sure if I want this. Exercising this muscle makes you better equipped in the moment to really own your no or own your yes.
I could see I'm thinking back to my younger self. Mm-hmm. And my cocky younger self that was actually pretty clueless, experimental, but clueless. I may have just looked at that chart and said, I can figure that out in a moment. But I think, what we were doing, because we are friends, but not in a play relationship, right? So it makes it easy for us to toss things back and forth, like me saying, would you bottom to a clown? Of course, some of y'all know about my clown. But by having a wise friend, if you will, that trusted friend we were talking about earlier, and to do this exercise, if it's a conversation that you might not do yourself, because like my younger self, I know that I was lazy, maybe I still am. I might not have done it myself, but having it as something to do when talking with my bestie. Yeah.
Well, and I think that points out why education is so important, right? Education exposes you to stuff like this. And I think one of the biggest problems with sexuality in our culture is we're given so little information and virtually no information about pleasure, right? We talk about sex in terms of, oh, you'll get pregnant, or oh, you'll get an STI, and we don't talk about pleasure at all in early education about sexuality. We're
Right.
told don't do it until you're married heterosexually, and then you're supposed to know everything. Like then once you got that piece of paper, you're supposed to be a good and caring and adventurous lover without being given any tools to be that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So education and certainly for those of you in the room who are parents, like helping your kids to understand the vast thing that is sexuality. Yes, we need to educate on risks, but we really need to educate on pleasure, and that sex is pleasurable, and that even though it's pleasurable, it might not be something you're ready for yet. And let's talk about that, and let's look at that, and let's do these kind of exercises, food, activities with kids, and get them exercising this muscle.
Ah, nice. Can I see that quadrant again? Because there was a bit about never done it, don't want to do it. Maybe another way to look at that, dear viewers, is never done it, not ready for it.
Yeah.
Because that gives me the option I might change my mind.
Right.
Like, next year.
And the super cool thing is you can come back to this time and time again. And you do it this year, you come back a year from now, things might be different because we change.
Now I see some hands up, so if I can hear the questions.
Okay, so this question is, do you ever integrate internal family systems theory into your work? And the questioner describes that as untangling internal conflicts by identifying different parts in oneself. Do you think that framework could shed any light on or help shift the conversation about consent and self-consent? And then they add, or the adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families model, which overlaps.
So it's interesting you asked that because I was literally just introduced to internal family systems today. And I made a note to myself like, ooh, I really need to look into this more. So I don't really feel equipped to answer that question at the moment, but it is something I'm interested in exploring.
Come back in a few months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Email me and I will tag it and come back when I have an answer for you.
I would like to know what you think, advice that you would give to the partners to whom, okay, so let's assume for a pair, right, a dyad, and one partner may be really comfortable with, is really, really comfortable with saying what they like, they don't like, and setting boundaries. And I've seen this, I've also been in situations with somebody like that. And then the other partner is, well, socialized cis girl in Japan, right? As I was saying earlier, am I doing this because of all these reasons? Which one is it, or combination of it? But the partner, and this, I see this often in BDSM 101 kind of thing. Well, just say what you like and don't like. And if you don't like it, say your safe word, as if it's just, right? And so for those of us who've had to stumble, struggle, and learn about first consent with self, and sometimes a challenge of self-advocating to the partner, what would you advise? I know that's not your usual client, because your clients usually the ones that are trying to figure out their self-confidence and a self-boundary and self-consent.
I think I think to the partner, I would ask the partner to remain, to try and remain curious, to um mm, it is a tough one because it isn't my normal audience.
Mhm.
And typically what I'm doing is I'm encouraging the person that I work with to start conversations with their partners. But it is, I can see where it would be challenging to be confronted. I mean, especially with somebody uh, who's doing this work and going, oh, wow, you know, I've been doing this thing for a long time and I'm not entirely comfortable with it. And I need to have this conversation.
So now with my work, okay, especially with Fort FM, my Women's Dominance Weekend Intensive, which will start up again once the whole COVID thing settles down. It's on a COVID pause right now. But here's what I'll see. Oftentimes, very often, I will have very confident, successful women that are attending the weekend, the 3-day intensive. Many of them are directors and C-suite and successful entrepreneurs. And they are confident in their everyday and business decisions.
Mhm.
And yet, the discussions in that little bubble that is Fort FM is the uncertainty, or that I don't know what I like. I keep doing this thing that my partner says that I will enjoy because I'm dominant and I don't know. Why am I doing this? And so incredibly confident, competent women. And in this case, the weekend is for female identified individuals of all manners of genders. So super competence and confident, and there's this little arena where they're not. Do you encounter that, and what do you advise?
I advise exercising your muscles, you know, getting to a point where internally you feel you are as you have that where your insides kind of match your outsides in terms of that self-confidence, where you feel like you can own your decisions and what you want, and feel comfortable voicing them. It is complicated and complex to have these conversations with someone close to you, particularly if you have a history, right? You've been with somebody 5, 10, 15, 20 years. There's been a lot of change over that time. And one, I would hope that if you've gotten that far in your relationship, you've come to a place where you can communicate about the changes and you've learned to weather them together. But that also can sometimes make conversations like this more loaded, because you have that history, and maybe you have that you have old hurts, and you know that are triggered in all of this as well. If you are having difficulty having these conversations with a partner, I would urge couples counseling to learn how to communicate better. And I'm not a therapist, so I don't, you know, when somebody comes to me and says, how can I, like, I'm having this problem and how can I do this? I go, therapy. Like, go work with somebody who can help you through your specific situation to help improve your life, your relationship.
And what about thank you. And what about the individual, not talking about the partner, but the individual super successful, competent women who, when it comes to the arena of sex, sexuality,
And they are
yeah,
not as confident in their sex and sexuality.
in terms of in terms of consent with self.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
And think in terms of consent with self. Because so often, this is something that I talk about in Fort FM, is I will see people engaging in, whether it's dominance or submission, topping or bottoming, kind of doesn't matter, but folks who make a them-shaped hole in the world, where all that they're doing is for external. And they never turned around and thought about, again, that quadrant thing.
Right.
Yeah. So a them-shaped hole. And the person can be extremely skilled with like the wacky pokey bindy thing, but
Right.
having never asked, why am I doing this and why do I really like it?
It takes practice, and it is a practice.
Now we got a question here. Is it a question or a comment? And it has to do with the quadrant.
Okay.
Let me see if I can read it out. Okay. In your consent quadrant, how do you categorize situations in context? And again, folks, the quadrant is an exercise of self-knowledge, and it's not a rule, just so it's a practice to be able to faster and faster make decisions in the moment. All right, so how do you categorize in the situation and context? For example, because it was such a visceral response, a catheter may be an undesired boundary. But if your deepest desire is a long-term, say 6 or more hours of a bondage scene, the catheter may become more interesting or a willing idea. Some contexts may change where the boundaries exist. And I think that's similar to changing the context by who's the partner we're thinking of.
Who's the partner we're thinking of? What's the situation? You know, like,
is it long-term bondage that you've...
right. Group, play party with a group of trusted friends versus walking into a dungeon in an unfamiliar city with nobody I know.
Context. You know what? My context on the catheter, because I've also, as when I was a little kid, I had urinary bladder issues, and I experienced catheter, and I, ew, kind of tickly weird. So I can't see myself doing that for play. So it would be under the tried it, don't want to do it again. But context. If the person or persons I'm playing with are medical professionals experienced in urological procedure, because part of my fear is that the urethra for me, I have an innie, is very short. I don't want something medically happening inside. But if the other person were somebody with medical experience who wanted me to have, again, context, if the context was not sadomasochism, but delight and pleasure seeking. For the context, the scenario and the context would be different. Because then, say, if I were bottoming to a high sensation masochistic experience, I will stick with the floggers, thank you very much, or play piercing, but not catheter. But if I had somebody who had the skill and the focus was anything that made me feel happy and good and better orgasm, and if that was the goal, then my quadrant will shift.
Right. I was even just thinking of, like, in terms of like things, not just thinking of things that I want done to me, but things that I like to do to others.
Mm-hmm.
In a BDSM scenario, I really enjoy peeing on people. I never thought that I would until I had the experience, and I'm like, oh, this feels powerful. And way more erotic than I thought it was going to be. So once I had that experience, I was like, oh, this is great. If I'm walking down the street outside my apartment and a guy says pee on me, no, that's, context.
So speaking of context, the quadrant exercise. Okay, folks, viewers, the quadrant exercise is an internal exercise. And the more you do it, the more you're able to navigate through context and offers. See how it works? We started with the super basic, and now we're building up with like the who, the how, the why. All right. So hopefully this is showing some things. Context affecting boundaries. All right, let's talk about context. So about that clown scene.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if the context were, I mean, this could possibly be me. So the context were terror clown from the darkness who's is trying to kidnap you and turn you into another psycho clown through means of terrible torment.
No.
Okay.
Oh.
Right. What if I were a Pippi Longstocking-esque clown who wanted to make you giggle?
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Damn.
I'm not a horror movie person either. I don't my daughter can't even look at a clown at all. She has the whole fear of clown things. I don't have the fear of clown things. But yeah, in more of like a horror psycho, I don't enjoy being frightened.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand some people do, but for me it's not an enjoyable.
Yeah.
Except roller coasters. Like roller coasters I like. But like people jumping out of things at me, I don't like.
So
that.
where your body is moving through space.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because that forced clownification. I may have negotiated that with a couple of other co-tops. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, there's the time is ticking away.
Oh my God, that went fast.
Yeah, it is. So as a parting note, I'm gonna again ask the attendees of what questions or even comments you might have for either myself or Jenn. So put that in chat or Q&A. But I would love to hear from you, Jenn, on what assignment would you like to give? I always have my guests give a little assignment and something that they could like do immediately.
Oh.
Whether they have a partner or not, or whether they're kinky or not, or whether they are sexual or not.
All right. I would like them right now to set a pleasure practice for, say, the next week. Look at your schedule, assess how much time you can give to yourself, and put it on your calendar, and do something each day for the next 7 days that brings you pleasure.
Oh, now that's a nice homework.
It's exercising the muscle.
Yeah, and that's why
getting accustomed to receiving pleasure, whatever pleasure means to you.
That's why we call it Consent Dojo. We start with the simple and we keep building up on it. And the person who asked the question earlier about the context said, hey, thanks, even better example of context affecting boundaries. Yes, I think that like clown one was particularly good.
Oh, and if anybody, I have a handout on this quadrant exercise. If anybody wants a copy of that, feel free to shoot me an email and I will send you the PDF.
The email and info will down there will be put in the video info, and if we can get, for those who are here right now, somebody like the Pippi Longstocking. Yeah, Pippi Longstocking as clown who just wants to make you have a giggle on something silly. There might be a little part of me like that. Okay, so you will see the email address, and could you read out for the folks who are listening your website and your email address?
Sure. My website is jenniferrahner.com. It's all one word. And my email is hello@jenniferrahner.com. And if you would like to work with me, and perhaps, Midori's got a month before I meet her in person at Sex Down South, so she might convince me for the whole clown scene. That's actually the next thing I'm doing is Sex Down South. I'm doing a pre-conference body sex circle there on September 6th and 7th. And I will be presenting with my husband at the conference. We're doing a session on the psychology of dating.
Oh, nice.
And it's not at the same time as yours, so I can come to yours.
Oh, good. Sex Down South is an in-person as well as, I think it's a hybrid. It's a hybrid event that happens in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. I believe the first weekend of September, I believe.
The weekend after Labor Day.
Okay, yes, the first full weekend of September. And so for those of you who are interested, you can attend either remotely or in person. It is an exceptional event with a lot of very good sex positive people, as well as academics, clinicians, and just good people. So, and I am about to wrap up the recording, but for all y'all, stick around just a sec who are here live, and Jen, stick around just a bit.
Okay.
Well, another Consent Dojo, some good stuff to think about, and you have been given an assignment to create and follow your pleasure practice and discipline. I like that homework, and thanks for joining. And I hope you'll come back again, check out the back episodes, and let's keep flexing our consent muscles, because this takes vigilance. Yeah. All right. So see you another time.